Welcome to the Beacon Podcast. Deborah Jane East and Ari Kopel are voices in the wilderness for positive change and a better future. Thank you for listening. And now, here are your hosts.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Jane East, and Ari Kopel and myself host the Beacon Podcast. First of all, Ari, I want to ask how you're doing this week.
I am doing excellent this week. We've had a little bit of setbacks because of weather, but now we're back. I'm watching a beautiful day out today, so it's sunny and bright, and I'm ready to tackle this one.
Oh, that's great. I think all across the United States, there's a lot of different locations that are experiencing extremes in heat, like high temperatures. So everybody, keep hydrated and stay inside as much as you can because that heat can overwhelm you just really quick. So you want to keep that in mind. But I do have a little update on the Sound of Freedom. As of today, it has broke the box office at $125 million.
Oh, my goodness.
The third week was higher than the first week. Is that
And
not fantastic?
It's phenomenal, and it's snowballing. And some people are watching it more than once, too.
Yes, I know. And I know that President Trump recently showed it in his war room and showed it to a lot of people, and it got a huge response there too. But I saw some people posting, like you and I have talked about, they post negative stuff about it.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody that I really, had a lot of pride in being a friend because they were so attuned to what was going on. But then they posted, oh, what are they doing with all this money? That is suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing?
I know.
Well, so I looked it up and made all the right contacts, and all of this money is being put back into the Underground Railroad budget.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's fantastic.
right, they're not accepting any fees. I mean, of course, they have to pay their expenses. Anybody would. You can't. If you need cameras or whatever, you have to have music, you have to
Mm-hmm.
pay for those things, but they're not accepting it as profit to go in any individual's pocket.
Yeah.
So I want to assure the listeners out there that when you pay it forward and buy tickets so that somebody else can see it, which was an ingenious idea. I mean, people are doing that. And when people keep on pushing it forward, I mean, this could go on all year. And I would
Oh,
love to
yeah.
see it do that, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's wonderful. That's one of the ways that I was able to bring more people into the theater with me as well, was because somebody did pay it forward. So
Oh, wow.
I think it's fantastic. I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying is that I have noticed, and I'm pretty sure you have noticed too, a lot of people who is like you said are against human trafficking and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden they started attacking the movie because they get on the bandwagon of the truth movement, right? They have to be truthers and they have to be exposing this, and everything is a conspiracy theory. And the next thing you know, they're knocking down a movie that is probably the only movie out there that is actually a voice for these children. They don't see the bigger picture, and they start attacking the movie for all this minutia. That, guess what? The leftists actually put it out there. They start creating. They start putting seeds of doubt, and that, a lot of people will pick it up thinking that's coming from experts that are aware of what is really going on behind the scenes, like a tie that's got all these Masonic little symbols on it, and I believe Tim Ballard was wearing. So now all of a sudden Tim Ballard is a Mason, right? And he's
I saw that.
You saw that, right? And just so you know, guys, and I just want to clarify this. Being a Mason is not the evil. The evil is the people that have taken that knowledge and are creating evil with it. A lot of techniques and knowledge, like even the Kabbalah information, that can be used for good or bad. Same thing with the Masonic information. And my grandfather, just so you know, my mother's side, uh, he was a Freemason, and he was only teaching mysticism and spirituality and things like that. And he was not part of any cabal system. So just because somebody's wearing a tie with Masonic symbols does not make him a bad guy. But aside from that, assuming that that was the case, the fact that a movie is talking about child trafficking and bringing awareness to this situation, which is diabolical, that has to be the positive thing that we need to focus on, not all the other nonsense that they're trying to distract us with. You agreed, Deb?
Oh, yes, I totally agree. And I will say this, it's just like humanity. Not all of humanity is bad. I mean, there are many good people in this world, but there's also bad, like there's good and bad aliens. It's just like in the alphabet agencies that I won't even mention.
Right?
You know what they are. There's good and bad in them. Well, there's good and bad in Freemasons.
Correct.
Not everybody was into the ritualistic satanic
Mhm.
stuff that some of the sects were doing. It's
Yeah.
not how it goes. They always hide within plain sight, and they use these organizations sometimes to like boost their credibility. I hated when they were doing Tim Ballard like that. And I also realized something else, and I know this will click with you because we think so much alike. Have you noticed that the ones who are not promoting it are the socialists and the
Yep.
liberals? Have you seen one liberal post anything about the sound of freedom? Because I haven't.
I honestly have not. Doesn't mean that they are not out there. I just personally, I haven't witnessed that at all. Um, and again, the Republicans, the MAGA people, the conservatives, the patriots, whatever they want to call, whatever the left wants to call
Right.
the ones that are supporting it, it doesn't matter. These are people that have morals, they have spiritual foundations. They're probably Christian people. They're anti, demoralization, anti degenerate type of behaviors. That's the type of people that are supporting it. Whether a person is a Republican or a Democrat is really irrelevant, in my opinion. Is Yeah,
Everybody should support getting rid of sex trafficking for children. Everybody, no matter what their affiliation is.
exactly. Sex trafficking, period. And the fact that it's now with children, that is, it's actually just demonic. And again, if those that are speaking against the movie, I'm pretty sure that I can tell who or what kind of entity they're worshiping. You kind of can tell, because
You're
those that are for God and the Christian faith are not usually into that, and usually because there's probably aberrations to everything, but that the norm is that a Christian individual is probably not going to promote that type of behavior.
right. And I even saw where a very well known news station, which I won't even mention, but it has been found out that they make big donations to satanic clubs. But you know
That's
what?
right.
They're not advertising anything about the sound of freedom or promoting that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
these things worry me because, like I said, these organizations hide in plain sight. So I want people out there to think before they bash the movie for some small symbol they, attune to the whole movie being bad. What is this movie about? It's about child sex trafficking. It's about saving children. This is a huge problem. I mean, the current administration, a while back we heard that it was 85,000 children. It's
Mhm.
300,000 children now.
Oh my gosh.
300,000. Now, I'm sorry. If it was five or six, you might could say, well, I understand how some of them can slip under the cracks. Not 300,000. No.
Hmm.
So this is a big clue for all you people out there that are looking for the truth. If a good thing is happening and they're not talking about it, they're not promoting it, there is a reason why.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that we got to bring that out there. But
Yeah.
I first wanted to bring out a few statistics about child sexual abuse that people probably don't really think about. I mean, there's just more than kids being abducted, and this is helpful when you're trying to help someone that was sexually abused. And I have done that before. As a social worker, I had clients that had been sexually abused. So, statistics show that victims of child sexual abuse are more likely to be sexually promiscuous. Have you heard that, Ari?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
We know that if they've had a history of being abused themselves as children, even though they hated it and it was horrible, there's some psychological preservation thing in their mind. It's almost like imprinting. And
Hmm.
I've heard especially little boys saying, I didn't want to do that, but I grew up thinking that was the norm, that all fathers did that to their sons. Or sometimes little girls, are like that and they don't know why. It's because somehow, because they were exposed to it so young, it imprints in a terrible, deviant way, and they feel like they have to do that. So that's something important for you to remember if you're looking to help, child sexual abuse victims. This is the sad part. 85% of child abuse victims never report their abuse.
Wow. That's a high number.
And we know why, don't we?
Hmm.
They
It
are
gets,
ridiculed.
yep.
They are sometimes not only raped physically, but they are raped spiritually. The prosecution, they point their finger, says, oh, well, you've always dressed very promiscuous and you had 9 boyfriends and you did this and all this kind of stuff. So the victim is put on the hot seat. Okay. Well, the thing about this, it doesn't matter how you dress. If you say no, that means don't have sex with me. I don't want to do it with you. This is my body, my choice.
Yep.
So, but that's one reason, the stigma, the shame, a lot of heavy guilt. They don't want to stand in judgment. So, it's really very hard to get sexual child abuse victims to report things to the police.
Threats too. I'm sure they get, the threats.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the threats, they've got to have that fear control.
Yep.
But research also shows us that 75% of teenage prostitutes were sexually abused. And that's
Wow.
just what we just talked about. They
Hmm.
think, well, I've ruined my life. Now, a lot of times when they're sex trafficked, they have a pimp or they have a handler and they can't get out of it. They're being held captive, they're tied up. A lot of the Mexican cartels do this. And, their self esteem is so bad. A lot of times they think they're in love with their abuser. Their abuser may buy them gifts, give them compliments or rescue them from an even more abusive home.
Hmm. Yep.
So that's what happens. And that is just really, that is a sad, sad story.
It's terrible.
And today, there is an estimated 42 million survivors of childhood sexual abuse. That's just in America.
Wow.
That is just bone
It's
chilling.
insane.
Now, this just teared me up when I read it, and it even does now. And I don't know who wouldn't be affected by this, but nearly 70% of all reported sexual assaults occur to children ages 17 and under.
Oh,
Children. The median age for reported child abuse is 9 years old, but it, as we once talked about, it even goes up to birth. So 9 years old is only the median age, but it's really all ages. And another sad statistic, 90% of abusers are people children know, love, and trust. And those abusers are usually a family member. And that is hard to wrap your head around, and sometimes it happens out of the blue. I mean, a parent will, be a good parent. And then when their daughter becomes a teenager and starts looking more like their wife and like an adult woman, and these men are alone with their daughters. I mean, there was a case where a man took his 16-year-old daughter and held her in a basement for 20 something years. And she had like 4 children. This is a true story. And he had a soundproof room. He told his family never go down there. He would say, "There's rats down there, don't go. I've just got a man cave." But he held his family captive,
Wow.
his own daughter. And the psychology, once she called him dad, he said, "Don't call me dad, call me Ronald," or whatever his name is. So he was trying to disassociate that was his daughter. When she finally escaped, I remember them bringing the daughter and the kids and stuff out, and the mother and the other son, he had a son that wasn't abused. They were standing there in shock. That father told the mother that missing daughter, that she ran off, they were in that household the whole time. So this is why you got to be aware. You got to be aware of stuff, aware of where your children are at. If your spouse or your fiance or your boyfriend is acting weird and your daughter or son disappears, don't leave any stone unturned, because the only way you're going to find that child is the process of elimination. I do want to address the teenagers out there today, because, a lot of young girls are trafficked, they get off their bus or anything. But can you remember offhand, Ari, any teenagers that were abducted and then they found them years or months later and they were okay, they survived? Have you heard of any stories? Can you think of anybody?
At this point, I know that there are. I might have read it in some article maybe months ago. But I don't remember the specifics. Whatever you bring up, I would like to also share what a teenager can do as well to
Oh, well,
to stay
I
healthy.
know you'll recognize these names. JC Duggard. She was kept by her captor. She was taken from right before she was going to get on a school bus, and this abductor had his wife with him. And
Wow.
yeah, he mind controlled the wife. He said, "You can't have me children, so God wants me to get my own." And so he got her. I think she was 9 years old. Now, I'm not for sure. She's very young, but I think he had built a shed for her, and was caught after, she had the 2 children. They found out they had to pay a big, big payment to her, because social services would come out there and check, and they never went into the backyard or the shed. So
Oh, wow.
she survived. Okay. Another one is pretty well known as Elizabeth Smart.
Yeah.
Now, that young lady, let me tell you, she was with her sister in her bedroom at night. There were twin beds. This person used to work for the father as a maintenance guy. He crawled in the window and he said, "If you scream, I'll kill your sister." So that's how they do. They make threats against you. They do all kinds of things to make you go along and not cause a scene. And another one that was years ago is a very well-known case. They made a movie with Steven Stainer, and the movie was My Name is Steven. This was also, it was a young boy that was stolen by a male he called himself a pastor. And the way that Stephen was mind controlled, he said, "Oh, your parents don't want you. You're going to live with me." And so he was abused from the first night that he was abducted. The way that he got out from that is when he was maybe 17, this man brought home another little boy and was going to do the same thing. And then Stephen realized, hey, he's doing to this little boy just what he did to me. Maybe he's lying about everything.
Hmm.
So
Figured it out.
when Parnell went to work the next day, Stephen took the little boy and they walked several miles and walked into a police station. And they asked him, why are you here? And he said, my name is Stephen. That's the first time he had said his name out loud in years.
Oh,
Because Parnell had told him, he gave him a new name. And so that was a very emotional moment in the movie. So all of these kids, and there's many, many more that do survive. I mean, I don't know if that's typical or not, but every story doesn't end in death. A lot of the younger ones do that are, underage, under 9 years old, because the trauma is so horrible. They know how, if they're caught, they're going to be dealt with in the prison system. And they don't like the children crying. And so they usually,
silence them permanently.
yes, they do. And so those are horrible stories. But once again, there was a young girl that was stolen from a campsite while her parents were camping. And she was gone for 3 weeks. And she was under 5 years old. I mean, she couldn't talk all that well. Well, surprisingly enough, they found her. She hadn't been sexually abused.
Oh
She
my
was
God, thank
just
God.
being left alone in a place. She was probably going to be sex trafficked, but he might have got afraid. But she was fine. When they found her, she knew her name. He would leave food and then just lock her up all day. So not every story is a tragedy. And so
Right.
that's what we're going to talk about. But first, can you tell me some things that you've heard of kids or teenagers doing and they were able to survive their abduction?
One of the ones that is more prominent to me is the one that I believe was shared on TikTok. And there was a woman who apparently she had been kidnapped or was being abused or something. And then the abuser was in the background. She was on camera and doing a signal that looked like, you know how the Native Americans will say how, and then you put your hand up like to say hi.
Oh, yeah.
So she would make that signal. So she would do that how sign, right? She'd tuck in her thumb and then wrap the other fingers around it, and that was a signal that she, was conveying help. So so there was a teenager that was doing that. I believe somebody saw the teenager through the window of the car doing that signal and immediately called the police, and they were able to rescue the child. So that is apparently has become like a universal signal for help or something. But yeah, that is the only one right now that I can think of that apparently anybody could do without screaming the word help, trying to bring attention to yourself. If you do that from afar or just keep doing that, the perpetrator may not know what you're doing. However, that seems to be a universal sign that, hey, I'm under distress or I've been kidnapped. So that's a really easy one to do and learn.
Right. You know what? And I'll look that up online so we can post the link for that. But
Sure thing, yeah.
I have also heard, I saw one recently where a child was in a car by herself. She was being abducted and he had locked her in. And she wrote on a paper and held it up in the back seat. It said, "Help me,"
Oh
while he
wow.
went into a store, and a police officer happened to see it.
Wow.
I've heard of children that were abused being in a restaurant. And one waitress, she noticed that the whole family ordered food, except they wouldn't order food for the little boy who looked
Oh,
emaciated and hungry. And they were fussing and said, "Oh, because you did this, you don't get any food tonight." And the waitress thought, this is not right.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, she called the police and told them that she wasn't sure what was going on, but could they come in and distract the parents so she could ask the little boy if he was okay. So the cops came in, and the officer asked the father to go over. And so she went over to the table, and the mother was busy watching the father with the police. And she said, "Do you need help?" And tears fell down his face. And he says, "I haven't eaten in 2 days." And they were
Oh,
able to save that little boy. And starvation is something that they use a lot with sex trafficked children as a way of control. And
sure.
it's something they easily understand. So it's really horrible. But I have a incredible story of survival. And I want to, like I say, speak out to you teenagers if you ever get in a situation like this. Now, I pray nothing ever happens to you, but what if it does? What if you are at the mall, or what if you're getting out of a car to go to work, or you're getting off work and, and you end up being abducted? What would you do to initiate your survival rate being higher? Well, I have the story of a 17-year-old girl, and her name was Lisa McVey. At 17, she was abducted by Bobby Joe Long, who was a serial killer and a rapist who sexually assaulted and murdered 10 women in the Tampa Bay area in 1984. All right, McVeigh was one of his last victims, and the information that this young girl gave police is what captured him. And here's the good part: McVeigh pursued a career in law enforcement. So she helps empower
Oh, wow.
other young women to be able to get through their abuse, to start a new life, and to empower them to be informed and to increase their odds of survival. So what did she do? You might find this very interesting. She loved to watch shows, cop shows like Law and Order and other things like that. She just had a knack for watching stories about law enforcement. So she got a lot of ideas and stuff from that. But, she had been raised rough. Her mother was drug and alcohol addicted. She had been in and out of foster care. And she had been sexually abused at home. Her grandmother's boyfriend one time put a gun to her head. That went on for 3 years. So none of this was anything new. But the night before she was abducted, she was going to write a suicide note because she had had enough of the abuse at home. And so she was already fighting for her life. So on November 3rd, she was snatched from a bicycle. She was on a ride to her grandmother's home after work. And a lot of kids do this. And the parents, they'll work like a block or two or something. They'll let them ride a bicycle or walk. Okay. So he just jumped out of his car, grabbed her, blindfolded her,
Oh, my
held
goodness.
her at gunpoint, and raped and tortured her for 24 hours. But here's what happened: during her captivity, she offered to be his secret girlfriend. She
I love it.
she wanted to
Yeah.
use psychology to get her some more time. So then she made up stories to get him to feel sorry for her. Like she said, "I'm the only child. My father is very sick. I have to take care of him. And, he has nobody else." And then she said, "I've been beaten all my life at home, and I really like you. We can do this again." So he never made a whole lot of remarks about that, but he took it in. So what she started doing was, and she had a blindfold on her for most of the time. Okay. But sometimes she could pull it up and look out of the cracks underneath, like
Mm.
get a little sliver here and there. She
A
would
little
tilt her head
glimpse.
up, a little
Mhm.
glimpse. So she committed herself to memorizing details. Okay. And this is brilliant. I wouldn't even thought of this. She asked him one time, could she go into the bathroom? When she went in there, she started putting her fingerprints all over the place.
Wow.
She started putting them on the mirror, on the sink, on the
So,
floor.
so smart. Unbelievable.
She even found something sharp and pricked her finger and left a tiny drop of blood in there as well. And so she did all of that. And when she came out, he didn't have any idea because, of course, he couldn't even see the fingerprints. Okay. And when he had her in the car, she could see the logo on the car dash. She paid attention to which direction they turned, after he got her. Like, she could tell she went down a street for 5 minutes, then she turned to the left. She could remember the sounds, all of this stuff. She even counted the stair steps up to the apartment he lived in. And she remembered looking down at her feet. She could see brick. She remembered that after she went up 22 stairs to the landing, then she went up 7 more steps and they were at his apartment. One time when he was really mad at her for something she had done, a question, she kept on saying, "Let me go home, let me go home." He got really mad and he was going to become violent to her. Okay, so she was standing there and she thought, he says, "Well, I guess we'll have to take a trip after a while." So she thought, oh no, he's tired of me. He's going to kill me. So she said, "Can I get you a glass of water? Or what can I do for you?" And so he said, "Yeah, get me a glass of water." So she did that, all with her blindfold on.
Oh my goodness.
And then she said, "What else do you want me to do? I love working around the house." He said, "Sweep my kitchen." So she started making herself useful.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she did. And the way that she escaped was, he was sleeping one time. He had been asleep for a couple of hours, and she knew that he always put the key in his pocket. So very, very slowly, and she knew he was asleep because he was snoring, she got those keys out, and that's how she got out the door. She got out the front door, and she escaped without him knowing about it for several minutes. And when she was outside, she flagged down a car, and these men were saying, like, "What?" Here comes a girl, and she's got cuffs on and all this kind of stuff. So first she went home because she got those men to let her out close to where her grandmother lived. They didn't believe her. The boyfriend had been abusive to her and they weren't going to get her any help. But finally she said, "Yes, I was raped." And so the grandmother let her call. So when they took her there, it took 3 of them before they would even believe her. And why? Because she had all those details and she wasn't crying. She was calm. She looked terrible looking. She was dirty. She was barefoot. And someone started asking her, "Well, do you remember where he lived at?" And then she said, "Well, I counted these steps. We took this turn." And then she said, "I remembered his dentist." She said, "I looked at his refrigerator when I was getting him water. I know his dentist number." Now, why was that important? Because the dentist would, of course, know his name and the address. So that was
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yep.
She also remembered that he had lots of pictures of animals on his wall. I mean, she paid attention to everything because she realized if she was going to save her life and get away and then get him convicted, it was up to her to provide all the proof because they can lie. The perpetrator can say, "Oh, she seduced me," or "She asked me to," or "She told me she was 20." They have lots of
Yeah.
things that they can do. So it finally took a well-seasoned investigator. He looked at her and he said, "First of all, I believe you." He said, "And I have a young daughter. I will do anything in my power to protect you." Well, because of this police officer, she was able to get him convicted. She was able to do everything that she needed to do to feel safe. And I think eventually this guy committed suicide. So then later, she decided, well, I had grace to be able to survive this. So that's when this police officer, he encouraged her. He stayed her friend her whole life. They're still friends. She's still alive. She decided to go in the Hillsborough Sheriff's Department, and she, as a dispatcher, then she became a reserve deputy. So she put her own self through the police academy and was deputized in 2004. So for the people out
Wow.
there that think sexual abuse survivors amount to nothing, that's not true. Some become heroes. They become advocates. They become lifesavers for other girls so that they won't have to go through this same stuff.
That's a great story.
It was very, very powerful. So
Yeah.
she wrote a little list of things that helped her. And if you can add things in there, I want you to just chip right in, because that's how we learn what to do. We brainstorm
Yep.
and we use these things, to help others. So, and some of this, it's going to be hard for you to digest, but think about it. If you are with an abductor and they're hurting you, slapping you, choking you, or talking about taking you out for the last ride, the thing you want to do is delay. Give yourself more time for the police to find you. The first thing that she said, follow your captor's instructions once you are in captivity.
Mm-hmm.
And if at any point it becomes clear that your captors have the upper hand, like they say, if you scream, I'll kill you, or they start choking you or hitting you, stop resisting right away and comply with the orders they give you. Now, I know that's a bold statement, but you can recover from physical rape physically. But you know what? If they kill you, your life is over and you don't have a chance to start over or be with your family or have a family of your own. So, in order to
Good point.
survive, you have to pick the lesser of two evils.
Mm-hmm.
Officers have said this, that you're more likely to be hurt or killed if you continue to fight after you're overpowered. Now, not in all situations, but some of these perpetrators, they're they're tall, they're giants, they're hefty. Some of them are big, they're 6 foot tall, and she might be like a 75-pound or 50 or 60-pound girl. Now, it would be very difficult, in that situation to get away from somebody like that. So that's when if you're able to think in those terms, if I have to do that to survive, at least I will get another chance at life and to be with my family. Another thing that I've heard is when they're put in restraints or confined space, they're always trying to untie their hands or find something to pick a lock. They're doing things, or if they're in a trunk. Now, I don't know about this, but you might, in some trunks, there is an emergency latch that they can push on the inside to open the trunk. The newer models, but I don't think all the older models have those, do they?
I don't think so.
Right, because I've heard about that. And that's one thing, they're thrown in there, they're in darkness, but they're supposed to have passed a law that all newer models have that escape button. So I hope that's enforced, because if you can get the trunk open when they stop at a stoplight, or I know one girl, she kicked out a tail light and she found some tiny cans of paint in there. And so she started dumping that paint out the tail light
Oh, wow. That's
to,
brilliant.
yes, to leave a trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would put her hand out there and wave. And yes, the cop saw it. So, what can I do? You got to examine all your surroundings and see what you can use. So I thought that was just brilliant. And I just remembered in the newer cars, they said that they were going to make those handles to open the trunk release glow in the dark.
Oh,
So
wow, that's
that when
great.
you're in there and it's nighttime, you can release that cord. And so I thought, wow, man, that's a genius idea. I love these safety features that they're
Yep.
doing. And then, they had so many abductions and people stuck in the trunk. And a couple of the abuse victims are the ones who brought that up to Congress and said, hey, they need to put this in automobiles. So wow. I mean, I think that's great. That's what we have
Yep.
to do.
Yep.
And I like what McVey did. She remembered about the car traveling. She said, I went 30 minutes. She said, I went 30 minutes without stopping. And so what happened is the police officers put her in a car and she remembered the direction she went in. So they went by her instructions. And you know what? They came to the exact block.
Oh my goodness.
The exact block. And so they stopped and she started looking around and there was two apartment complexes. And so there was a maintenance man outside and the cop went up and she walked up there and she said, is there an apartment here with someone that has a lot of animals pictures up on their wall? And the police said, yes, they may keep their blinds down all the time, or they might be moody, or people report that he's strange. And he said, oh, yeah, that's 237. So, do you see what her observations did? They really, really helped her. So, what a great thing that she was able to do that.
Yeah, you really need to pay a lot of attention to detail. And, the thing is to stay calm, right? Because if
Yes,
you're in a panic, you're not going to be paying attention to the detail that this, girl did. So, uh, just know that those type of things, that type of attention to detail could save your life.
you're exactly right. What's the first thing an abductor is going to do if you have a child or a young girl that's screaming? They're going to want to silence them so nobody else will hear them.
Yep.
And if you're crying hysterically or begging for them to let you go, they're going to think, well, somebody's going to hear me because not all of them have soundproof rooms. A lot of neighbors pay attention to what's going on. I've heard people in my complex. I've heard arguments. I've heard people shouting at each other, and when I hear that, I always go and look in what direction that is, just in case it's somebody that's in trouble. So that's
Yep.
how the perpetrators are thinking. Basically, these girls that survive, they try to connect with the kidnapper. Now, don't pretend that you support them. Don't say, "Oh, yes, this is you're a wonderful person." Just connect with them like, "I understand you're lonely. I like to talk to somebody too." It's just making them feel a little bit normal, because a lot of times they know they're monsters. They know they're perverted, and they are. Most of them don't have lots of friends. They stay isolated. They are moody. And so when somebody has that kind of connection, I think they'll feel a little bit more guilty if they try to hurt you. So I think that what this young lady did is really going to reverberate in many, many victims of sexual abuse in the future. She wrote a book. Yep, she
Do you
wrote
have
a
the
book.
title?
Yes, I'll post that so she wrote a book and she's going around to schools and universities and she's talking to people, you know, just remember too, when we talk about engaging with them, don't try to bring up politics because what if you're held by a terrorist? You don't want to get into that stuff. Make it generic stuff, about family and try to focus on good things just to establish a conversation because they don't want that connection. They don't want to feel guilt. And some of them, they're so isolated. If you just reach out like that McVey did, she said, let me get you a glass of water. That opened the door. That gave her more time. So I understand that to many young girls, this is you would say, oh, that's morbid. I don't even want to think about that. Well, you know what? So do all the girls who are going to be abducted today, tomorrow, next week. Even though the Sound of Freedom has come out and is making people aware of it, it's not going to stop right away, is it, Ari?
Nope, unfortunately.
Right. And that's the part that is just really mind blowing, that it just keeps escalating. But I do see a lot of hope in all the people that are jumping on board with this. And when you're abducted, you're going to have to use your mind to outsmart them. It might be a little thing you remember. Maybe they've got an accent, they're Italian, or they come from the Bronx or something like that. You got to, remember those things and write them down if you get a piece of paper or somewhere and you put it in your pocket or save it. But the other thing, and this is sad to think about, but remember sometimes you may be held for a few days, weeks, months. Sometimes it might be just for a few hours. I mean, you just don't ever know. But another tip, and I think you might have some things to chip in about this. I've noticed a lot of runners who are abducted or who take the same route every day to the gym. They're doing that same schedule over and over again. Well, what do you think is going on when they're doing that, Ari?
Well, if there's a predator, they're going to already, know your route, and they're going to be waiting for you and prepared to take you. I mean, I certainly would change up my routine.
Oh, that's exactly the right answer. They know your routine. A lot of them study it for weeks, months, days. They know exactly what you do. They know whose car is in the driveway. They find out stuff about, they can look at the mailbox and see your name. They go on social media. That is one thing. Never put your daily routine on social media. And people are so guilty of doing that, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm going to shop at Target today, or I'm going out to get a meal and come back home. I mean, do not put all that stuff on there. You're just giving them a map to where you are. And that's awful. We don't need to tell everything. We don't need to post our address publicly or, send out our phone number. Even these a lot of these social apps, they'll say, what is your phone number? I never give them my phone number. I never give it. I know a pay phone. I know a phone in
Yeah.
another town where you can call and get the weather. That's what I do.
Oh, yeah. I put the wrong one too.
I do that. I do that, and it works. It works. So some phone is probably ringing all through the night. But I'm not going to give them that, because if people hack
Yeah.
into your account, they're going to get all your personal information. So I think these are a lot of tips that can be very helpful. Preventive change, changing your routine, changing your personal daily habits, not jogging at the same time, making yourself unpredictable. Don't go eat at the same restaurant every day. If you think you're being followed, what do you think would be a good idea to do? Now, I didn't think about this. Let me see if you can think of something.
If you're being followed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's happened to me many times.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially in the car. So what I do is I drive to my local police.
Oh, my gosh. I love you, woman. That's exactly right. Drive to
I
the
mean, go
police
ahead, follow
station.
me. Go ahead, follow me. Here, I'm going to show you
Right.
where I'm going.
Oh, man, I can
Oh,
see
yeah.
their face now. That is perfect. Do you see how knowledge can empower you? All you ladies out there, this is good advice. If someone is following you, don't randomly just drive around till you get on a street with no outlet. Go to the local police station. Go to the front of a Walmart with lots of illumination and people going in and out where there's cameras. Do not go on some side street. Do not try to outrun them. those are things that you don't do, but that is the perfect advice. I knew that you would know that. Uh, the other thing is take self-defense classes.
Hmm.
Um, I learned a few. I took a class, and if I can learn it, hey, anybody can. Just things about what if you were in your car and somebody was hiding in your back seat?
Right.
You know, the first thing they do is they put their arm around your throat to try to choke you. Well, you can still take your fingers and try to poke their eyes out.
Hmm.
You can still take the other hand and beep the horn. When you're in a situation, your brain will shut down if you don't know things beforehand to do. All of these are things that can help you increase your survival rates, and I hope that you never have to face a situation like this. And my prayers are with you. If you are out and something like this does happen to you, don't give up hope. For all of you out there that want to do things to try to help this come to an end, there is a number that you can call to report missing children or child pornography, and that's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800 The Lost. That's 1-800-843-5678. That's a good number. And child pornography can lead to rescues of kids because they can look up your IP address.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing is please continue to donate to the Operation Underground Railroad. We'll put that link up. So if you will donate to the cause or forward some more tickets, you are being as much a voice as anybody. I just want to thank you for caring about these kids because they have suffered way too long.
Yeah, and you can also be part of the solution by being vigilant, helping children, that seem to be lost or in an aisle in Walmart. Uh, just even me the other day going to Costco, I'm walking out of the parking lot with my little cart, and I see this lady. Well, I don't see the lady. Here's the problem. I don't see the lady. I see the shopping cart with the little baby. He was about 1.5 years old, maybe two, sitting in that little chair area, that little seating area of the cart. And
Uh-huh.
the woman is completely buried inside her car, putting stuff away, and the kid is out there. And my jaw dropped. So what I did was I stuck around. I just stayed around that area, pretending my car was closer to her, watching to make sure that nobody was going to snatch that child. And I did that for another lady as well in another Walmart. Again, people are not aware that these things happen in a split second. So if I'm aware of it, I'm going to do my part and make sure that I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing for the child.
Right.
Uh, so become vigilant, and also I suggest creating some kind of like a community task force or a community watch, that you're all empowering each other in the community and the neighborhood to make sure that all the children are well, and vigilant about who's playing in the front lawns and who's walking home, that type of thing. So that's how we can do our part, and it really doesn't cost us any money. It's just a matter of caring enough to do it.
Oh, that is fantastic advice. And, that's why we do this podcast because we don't want you to just listen to what we have to say. We want you to become a part of our voice. And not only that, but pass it along to others so that our voice can be so loud they have to hear us. And that is our hope and our prayer that you will take something from this show and implement it in your life or help implement it in the lives of others because our children are precious. They're precious and they're irreplaceable. So, once again, time has flown. Thank everybody for listening and sharing the podcast. Next week, we've got a very, very special show. It's something that we have been investigating for a while, and we have come up with some information you will not expect. And this is all about what's going on with the transgender stuff. It's quite eye-opening, isn't it, Ari?
It sure is.
Remember, Ari has 2 books. The link for those will be in the description box. These tools will help empower you to make decisions and to get your life back in track. If you've suffered any of these consequences, get your power back. Yay. And these books offer you the tools, and I think you'll find that they will make a huge difference in your life. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Ari, I hope you have a fantastic week.
Thanks
And
to you.
thanks to all you listeners. We are still in business doing the Beacon podcast. All right, we'll talk again in a couple of weeks.
You have been listening to Deborah Jane East and Ari Kopel on the Beacon Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube to catch our next episode.